They threw him out on a Friday. They changed the locks on a Saturday. They divided his belongings into a trash bag and 2 cardboard boxes on a Sunday and left them on the curb like he was something the house had outgrown. They laughed about it at dinner that same evening. They toasted with good wine and said good riddance and meant every syllable. By Monday, they would never laugh again. By Monday, everything they had thrown away was worth $200 million. The thing about Marcus Webb that his wife's family never understood, had never tried to understand, had decided before the first handshake that understanding was not something they owed him, was that he was the kind of man who held things together quietly, and you only discovered this when he was gone and the things started falling apart. He had been holding things together for 3 years. 3 years of getting up at 5:45 to be at the warehouse by 6:30 because the logistics coordinator position didn't pay what it should have and the overtime did, and overtime required being first through the door. 3 years of handing over his paycheck to the joint account, every dollar of it, nothing withheld, nothing hidden, and then watching the joint account be discussed at family dinners as evidence of his inadequacy. 3 years of sitting at a table where he was the subject of the conversation rather than a participant in it, receiving the Caldwell family's assessment of his worth with the specific patience of a man who has decided that reacting is less useful than observing. The Caldwells were not evil people. Marcus had concluded this early and maintained it even now, standing on the curb on a Friday evening with a garbage bag and 2 cardboard boxes in the November cold, watching the curtain in the living room move as someone confirmed he had actually left. They were not evil. They were people who had mistaken their own standards for universal ones, who had built a family culture so thoroughly centered on a specific kind of visible success, the car, the title, the square footage, the right school, the right address, that anything outside those parameters had become literally invisible to them. Marcus Webb, with his warehouse overtime and his loyalty and his genuine, uncomplicated love for their daughter, was not invisible exactly. He was the wrong frequency. They could see him, but they couldn't receive him. His wife, Keisha Caldwell Webb, had started out receiving him just fine. She had met him at a mutual friend's birthday party 5 years ago, a backyard gathering, nothing fancy, the kind of party where people actually talk to each other because there's no performance required. Marcus had been standing near the grill, not grilling, but watching the person grilling with the focused interest he gave everything, and Keisha had asked him what he was thinking, and he had said, without self-consciousness, without trying to be interesting, that he was thinking about the distribution of heat across the grill surface and how you could cook everything more evenly if you understood the hot spots. She had laughed and then stopped laughing and then looked at him with genuine curiosity and said, "Do you think about things like that all the time?" He said, "Mostly." "What else?" she asked. And they had talked for 3 hours while the party happened around them and the food got cold and their mutual friend made increasingly obvious gestures in their direction that they both ignored because the conversation was more important than the party. He had proposed 14 months later on a Wednesday, which Keisha's mother, Brenda, had identified as the first sign that something was wrong. What man proposes on a Wednesday, she had said, as though the day of the week indexed the sincerity of the feeling. Marcus had proposed on a Wednesday because that was the anniversary of the backyard party, and he wasn't going to let the calendar tell him when his feeling was appropriately expressed. Keisha had said yes immediately and completely and with the full body commitment of a woman who has been waiting for a specific question and is ready with the answer. They had been married in a ceremony that Brenda had funded, which had seemed like generosity and had turned out to be purchase, because everything Brenda funded became something she owned, and the wedding had set the terms for what the Caldwell family believed about their investment in Marcus. The investment, by their accounting, had not performed. Brenda Caldwell was 61, silver-laced hair, a retail management career that had topped out at district supervisor and that she described at all times as executive leadership. She drove a leased Lexus she couldn't quite afford and wore clothes that required more care than her schedule permitted, and had the bearing of a woman performing a class she had not quite reached. She had decided about Marcus at the rehearsal dinner, something about the way he ate his bread, which was enthusiastically, which she had read as the eating of a man who was relieved to have a free meal. She had told Keisha that night, "Baby, he's hungry, and I don't mean that as a compliment." Keisha had defended him then, firmly, clearly, the way she had defended him for the first 18 months, with the conviction of a woman who trusts her own judgment. Brenda had received the defense with the patience of a woman who intends to outlast it. She had outlasted it. Denise's father, Dennis, was quieter but more devastating because he expressed his opinion through the specific technique of treating Marcus as a project, asking questions at family gatherings about his 5-year plan, his investment strategy, his retirement contributions, as though Marcus were a business pitch that needed improvement rather than a man who had married his daughter. Dennis had never once asked Marcus about what he cared about, what he was curious about, what made the 3-hour party conversation possible. He asked about metrics. Marcus consistently had insufficient metrics. Keisha's brother, Devin, 25, living in a spare room at his parents' house while telling everyone he was in between opportunities, which had been true for 2 years, had appointed himself the lead voice of the family's criticism, possibly because criticizing Marcus gave him a position of superiority he couldn't locate anywhere else in his life. Devin called Marcus the logistics guy at family dinners in a tone that made logistics sound like something you did because you'd failed at everything with a future. Marcus had absorbed this for 3 years. He had done it because he loved Keisha, because the woman who talked to him for 3 hours at a backyard party about heat distribution and then said yes on a Wednesday was real and worth staying for. He had not anticipated that the weather would move inside. It had started moving inside about 8 months ago. Keisha had started canceling their Wednesday dinners, the small private ritual they had maintained since the backyard party, just the two of them, marking the day the conversation happened. At first with legitimate reasons, then with less legitimate ones, then without explanation, with the specific silence of a woman who has decided that explaining is more energy she wants to spend. She had started having family dinners at her parents' house without telling Marcus until the morning of, then without telling him at all. She had started responding to Brenda's assessments of Marcus with the specific quality of silence that is agreement without the accountability of words. And then, 3 weeks ago, she had sat down across from him at the kitchen table where they had eaten 600 dinners together and said with the rehearsed delivery of someone who has practiced this conversation that she didn't think this was working and that her family agreed and that she thought it was time for Marcus to find somewhere else to live. "Your family agrees?" Marcus said. "Yes." "Did your family take a vote, or was it more of a consensus?" "Marcus, I'm asking genuinely. I want to understand the process." She had looked at him with the expression he had been seeing more frequently, the expression of a woman who has been told that his calmness is a character flaw and has started to believe it. "This isn't a joke." "I know it isn't. I'm not joking. I want to understand how my marriage ended. I think I'm entitled to understand that much." Keisha had not answered the question about the process. She had said her parents thought it would be best that he moved out by the end of the week, and that Devin would be there on Friday to help with the transition, which was the word she used, transition, and which Marcus noted because it was the word of someone who had been coached on language by people who wanted the exit managed efficiently. He had spent the week quietly putting his affairs in order, which mostly meant organizing what was his versus what was theirs, because 3 years of marriage produces a complex archaeology of ownership, and Marcus was precise about these things. He did not take anything that wasn't his. He did not leave anything that was. He packed 2 cardboard boxes and a garbage bag, and he was ready on Friday morning 8 hours before Devin arrived with the specific energy of a man who has been given a task that makes him feel significant. Devin had not helped carry anything. He had stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and watched Marcus make the trips to the curb, and on the last trip he had said, without irony, "You know, some men just aren't built for this life." Marcus set the last box down on the curb, looked at Devin. "Built for what life?" he said. Devin shrugged, the elaborate shrug of a man who has confused vagueness with profundity. "The life, having things, being someone." Marcus looked at the house, at the curtain moving in the living room window, at Devin in the doorway. Good luck with the opportunities, the ones you're in between. He picked up his garbage bag. He walked away. Behind him, he heard Devin laugh. Then he heard the door close. Then he heard faintly, through the closed door and the closed window and the November air, Brenda's voice saying something and the family laughing together at the sound of it. He kept walking. His friend Raymond had a couch. Raymond was the kind of friend who had a couch and offered it before being asked and didn't make the offering into a thing. Just said, "You're staying here, there's food, don't thank me," and then went back to watching basketball. Raymond had known Marcus since they were 11 years old, and Raymond had, in 30 years of friendship, never once asked Marcus about his 5-year plan. He slept on the couch Friday night. He slept on the couch Saturday.
It was accurate all 4 times. He sat on Raymond's couch with the ticket in his hand and thought about a Friday evening and a garbage bag and 2 cardboard boxes, and Devin saying some men just aren't built for this life. He thought about that for a while. Then he made the call to the Lottery Commission. The Lottery Commission's claims process required, among other things, that the winner appear in person at the regional office with valid identification, the original ticket, and, this was the part that Marcus read 3 times on the website, a willingness to participate in a public announcement ceremony, which the commission used for promotional purposes and which was, by the terms of accepting the prize, non-negotiable. Marcus read the non-negotiable part, thought about it, called Raymond into the living room. Raymond came in eating cereal, still in his sleep clothes, unbothered by the morning in the way of a man who has made peace with most things. Marcus held up the ticket. Raymond looked at it. Marcus held up his phone showing the verified numbers. Raymond looked at that. Marcus said the number out loud, $200 million. And Raymond sat down very slowly on the coffee table, which creaked under him, and said nothing for approximately 45 seconds. "Say it again," Raymond said finally. Marcus said it again. Raymond put his cereal bowl down on the floor, stood up, walked to the kitchen, walked back, sat on the actual couch this time, looked at Marcus. "You bought that ticket on Sunday," Raymond said. "Yes." 2 days after they put you out? 2 days, Marcus said. "They put me out Friday. I bought the ticket Sunday." 2 days, Raymond said. He absorbed this with the specific quality of a man absorbing information that has a moral dimension he needs a moment to process. "Marcus, yes. Do you understand what this means? I've been sitting here for 2 hours understanding it. I need you to drive me to the lottery office." Raymond stood up immediately. "Let me get dressed." The Lottery Commission's regional office was a surprisingly ordinary building, beige walls, fluorescent lighting, a waiting area with chairs that had been chosen for durability rather than comfort. Marcus had expected something more significant for the location where $200 million would change hands, and then remembered that the significance was entirely in the ticket and not in the building, which was a thought that felt true about more than lottery offices. The claims agent, a woman named Patricia, 50s, the practiced efficiency of someone who has processed significant moments for long enough that she has stopped being surprised by them, verified the ticket in 11 minutes. The verification was thorough. Marcus appreciated thoroughness. "Mr. Webb," she said when it was complete, with the specific tone of someone transitioning from professional to significant, "you are the sole winner of the November Mega Millions jackpot. $200 million, lump sum after taxes, $128 million. A pause. "Congratulations." Marcus nodded. "The public announcement ceremony," she continued, "is scheduled for Wednesday. The commission will issue a press release Tuesday evening, and the ceremony will be covered live by local news affiliates and picked up nationally. Your name will be public record at that point." She looked at him carefully. "Some winners choose to have family present at the ceremony. I'll have one person, my friend Raymond." Patricia looked at Raymond, who was sitting in the chair beside Marcus, still faintly stunned. "I'll be there," Raymond said. "I'll wear something nice." Tuesday evening arrived. Marcus spent it in Raymond's apartment, eating takeout, watching a completely unrelated documentary about deep-sea fish, and feeling, surprisingly, specifically calm. Not the calm of a man suppressing something, but the genuine calm of a man who has processed the information fully and is now simply waiting for the next thing. He had called his attorney, a law school friend named Gregory who practiced estate planning, and had said upon being told the news the specific thing that a good attorney says, which is don't tell anyone else yet and don't do anything yet, and followed Gregory's instructions to the letter. He had not called Keisha. He had thought about calling Keisha, had held the phone and looked at her name in his contacts for a long moment on Monday afternoon, had thought about the Wednesday dinners, the backyard party, the 3 hours and the heat distribution conversation, and her saying yes on a Wednesday with her whole body. He had put the phone down. There was nothing he could say to her on Monday that the Wednesday press conference would not say more completely. The press release went out at 7:47 Tuesday evening. Marcus did not see it go out. He was asleep by 9 because Marcus Webb had always kept reasonable hours, and $200 million had not changed his relationship with sleep. In the house on Delwood Avenue, the house with his name still technically on the lease for 11 more days, the house where the curtain moved as he walked away with his garbage bag, Keisha was watching television. Not looking for anything specific, the specific aimlessness of a Tuesday evening, the remote moving through channels with the half attention of someone waiting for something to catch her interest. She had been in a complicated mood for 3 days. Not guilty exactly, her family had coached her away from guilt with the sustained efficiency of people who believe that decisive action requires no second guessing. But something adjacent to guilt, something that visited her at approximately 9 in the morning and again at approximately 9 at night, and that she had been managing by keeping the television on and the house full. The house was full tonight. Brenda was in the kitchen, Dennis was in the armchair, Devin was on the floor with his back against the couch, phone in his lap, in the position he had occupied in his parents' house for 20 years and now occupied in his sister's house with the same unexamined comfort. Keisha was on the couch with the remote. She passed through the local news channel at 7:53. The ticker at the bottom of the screen read, "Breaking. Local man wins $200 million Mega Millions jackpot. Winner identified as Marcus Webb, 34, of this city, ceremony Wednesday noon." She passed it, went 2 more channels, stopped, went back, read it a 3rd time because the first 2 times she had read it with the part of her brain that processes text automatically, and this time she needed the part of her brain that understands what words mean. Marcus Webb. The remote fell out of her hand. It hit the hardwood floor with the specific crack of a plastic object dropped from a height, and the sound of it brought Brenda out of the kitchen, and Dennis's eyes up from his phone, and Devin's attention from whatever he was looking at, and all 3 of them registered Keisha's face before they registered the screen. And Keisha's face was the face of a woman whose entire understanding of the last 3 days has just been restructured from the floor up. "Keisha?" Brenda said. Keisha pointed at the television. They looked. The news anchor, a composed woman in a red blazer who delivered information with the practiced evenness of someone trained not to editorialize, was saying, "The winner of last Sunday's Mega Millions jackpot has been identified. Marcus Webb, 34, a logistics coordinator from our city, will claim the $200 million prize at a public ceremony tomorrow at noon." Mr. Webb verified his ticket Monday morning. He is reported to be in good spirits. The screen cut to file footage. Marcus at the Lottery Commission office shaking hands with a representative, the specific, composed expression of a man who is receiving significant information and processing it completely before responding. The Caldwell family looked at the television. The television looked back. Devin made a sound. It was not a word, it was the sound of a man whose architecture has lost its foundation, a short, involuntary vocalization of a person whose understanding of events has collapsed simultaneously at every point. Dennis stood up from the armchair, sat back down, stood up again, stood very still. Brenda walked to the television and stood in front of it as if proximity would change what it was showing. Her mouth was moving slightly, the specific movement of a woman doing arithmetic that isn't resolving correctly, replaying the conversation, the Friday evening, the bags on the curb, the laughter at dinner, good riddance said ever good wine, and stacking all of it against the name on the ticker at the bottom of the screen. Keisha had not moved. She was sitting on the couch where she had been sitting when the remote fell, and she was looking at the television, and her expression was the expression of someone experiencing multiple things simultaneously that have no word for their combination. Grief and shock, and something that was not quite guilt but lived in the same neighborhood. "That's," Devin started. "Yes," Keisha said. "The same?" "Yes," Keisha said. But we thought he was Devin, Dennis said, and the single word had the quality of a man needs his son to stop talking because the talking is making it worse. Devin stopped talking. The news anchor was still speaking. The ceremony was tomorrow at noon. The lottery commission confirmed a single winner. The convenience store where the ticket was purchased would receive a $500,000 bonus. Marcus Webb had no comment at this time. Brenda turned from the television. Her face had the expression of a woman reorganizing rapidly, not processing grief or guilt, but calculating, because Brenda Caldwell had spent 61 years being a woman who calculated, and the calculation now was clear and large and presented itself to her immediately. "Call him," Brenda said to Keisha. Keisha looked at her mother. "Call Calvin, call Marcus," Brenda said, correcting herself mid-name, the error revealing something about how she had cataloged him. "Call him right now." "And say what?" Keisha said. Her voice had the quality of someone speaking from a place very far inside themselves, the voice of a woman who has just seen something she cannot unsee and is operating from beneath the weight of it. "He's not going to answer," Keisha said again. She knew she was right. She knew she was right in the way you know the temperature of a room you've been in for years, not by checking, but by having been there long enough to know what it feels like. Marcus Webb, in 3 years of marriage, had never once answered a question he wasn't ready to answer, had never once engaged with a situation before he had decided how to engage with it, had never once reacted when he could instead respond. He was somewhere right now, on Raymond's couch probably, because Raymond was the friend Marcus would go to. She knew this and had always known this. He was either asleep or choosing not to think about Tuesday evening because he had decided that Tuesday evening wasn't his to think about yet. She picked up the phone anyway.
Called his number. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail, and she listened to his voice, his actual voice, the voice from the backyard party conversation, the voice that had talked about heat distribution with the specific earnestness of a man who finds everything genuinely interesting, saying he wasn't available and please leave a message. She did not leave a message. What would the message have been? Wednesday arrived with the specific quality of a day that has been anticipated with completely different feelings by different people. Marcus woke at 5:45, which was when he always woke, and lay on Raymond's couch looking at the ceiling and feeling, still, surprisingly, calm. He showered. Raymond had lent him a suit jacket that was slightly too wide in the shoulders, which Marcus noted and accepted because Raymond's offer was genuine and the fit didn't matter as much as the gesture. He ate breakfast, he read the news on his phone. He did not read the articles about himself because he knew what he knew and didn't need the news to confirm it. At 11:15, Raymond drove him to the ceremony venue, a hotel ballroom that the Lottery Commission used for large announcements, set up with a podium and cameras and the specific organized chaos of a live media event. There were more cameras than Marcus had expected. He noted this with the same quality of attention he gave everything, not overwhelmed, just informed. Gregory was there, his attorney, in a suit that fit correctly, who shook Marcus's hand and said quietly, "You ready?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Media's going to ask about family, personal life. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to." "I know," Marcus said. The ceremony began at noon. On Delwood Avenue, the television was on. Keisha had not slept. This was visible in her face. Not the ordinary tiredness of a bad night, but the specific exhaustion of someone who has been awake because the thing keeping them awake cannot be resolved by lying down and closing their eyes. She was on the couch in the same position she had been in when the remote fell. She changed her clothes at some point. She had made coffee. She had not drunk it. Brenda and Dennis had gone home at 11 last night and come back at 9 this morning, which told its own story about what they had been doing in the intervening hours, the calculation continuing, the strategy being assembled, the family's response to the situation being prepared. Devin had stayed. He was on the floor in the position he occupied everywhere, but quieter than usual. The specific quiet of someone who said some men aren't built for this life, to a man who is about to stand in front of cameras and accept $200 million, and who is now sitting with the complete wreckage of that sentence. The news cut to the hotel ballroom at noon.
The lottery commission director was at the podium. Behind him, the large ceremonial check, the oversized prop that these ceremonies always used, the number on it theatrical and enormous, $200 million, winner, Marcus Webb. And then Marcus walked out. He walked the way he had always walked, without performance, without announcement, the specific, unhurried walk of a man who knows where he's going and doesn't need anyone to watch him get there. The suit jacket was slightly too wide in the shoulders. He hadn't tried to fix it. He stood at the podium and looked at the cameras with the same expression he'd given the family dinner questions about his 5-year plan. Patient, present, unintimidated. In the living room on Delwood Avenue, Devin made the sound again. The same involuntary sound from last night, slightly different frequency. Last night it was shock. This morning it was something more like the sound of a man understanding the full scale of what he had participated in. Brenda reached forward and turned the volume up. The director was speaking, the history of the jackpot, the odds, the single winning ticket purchased at a convenience store. Then he gestured to Marcus and stepped back from the podium. Marcus looked at the cameras. I don't have a long speech. His voice was the same voice, not performed for the occasion, not inflated by the significance of the moment, just his voice, the voice that talked about heat distribution for 3 hours at a party because he found it genuinely interesting. I want to say one thing, and then I'm going to go figure out what to do with the rest of my life. He looked at the cameras with the steady directness of someone who has decided exactly what they want to say and is saying it. 3 days before I bought that ticket, I was asked to leave my home. I was told by the people who asked me to leave that I wasn't enough, that I hadn't built anything worth staying for, that some men aren't made for a certain kind of life. He let that sit for a moment. I thought about those words a lot on Sunday morning. I thought about them when I was looking at the ticket, and what I decided was they were right. I'm not made for that kind of life. I'm made for a better one. He picked up the ceremonial check, smiled at the camera. Not a triumphant smile, not a vindicated smile, just the smile of a man who has found his sentence and delivered it, and is ready for the next thing. The room applauded. On Delwood Avenue, nobody applauded. Keisha was crying. Not the performed crying of someone who wants to be seen crying, but the private, involuntary crying of a woman in the specific pain of understanding, really understanding, the way you understand things that come too late, what she had held and what she had let go, and what the distance between those two things had cost her. Brenda was on her phone. "Put it down, Mama," Keisha said. You're calling someone who knows him to get his new number. Put the phone down." Brenda put it down, slowly, with the specific reluctance of a woman setting aside a plan she hasn't finished abandoning. Dennis sat in the armchair with his hands on his knees and looked at the television with the expression of a man receiving an education he is too old to enjoy and too honest to refuse. He had built a business over 30 years on the ability to read a room and a person and a situation. He had looked at Marcus Webb for 3 years and read him as insufficient. The television was telling him with the unambiguous clarity of a check with 8 zeros what that reading had cost everyone in this room. Devin said nothing. Devin had not said anything of substance since Tuesday evening, which was, Marcus would have noted if he'd been there, perhaps the most surprising consequence of the whole situation. Marcus called his mother from the parking lot outside the hotel while Raymond was getting the car. His mother, 63, retired, living in the same house in Georgia where Marcus had grown up, the same house with the small piece of land her grandmother had left her, answered on the second ring. "Baby," she said. She had seen the news. She had been watching it on her television in Georgia and called 3 people and then sat down and cried the way mothers cry when they understand the full picture of what their children have been through and what they have come out of. "Hey, Mama," Marcus said. "Are you okay?" "Yes," he said. "I'm good. I'm really good." "I saw what you said on the camera, what you said at the end." "Yeah." "Did you mean it?" she asked. "About the better life?" "That's why I bought the land in Georgia," he said. "That's why you kept it. I've been thinking about what to build on it." A silence on the line.
the specific silence of a mother receiving the confirmation that her child has been thinking clearly and planning forward even in the middle of the hardest thing. "Come home," she said. "Come see it before you decide. I'll be there next week." The calls from the Caldwell family started at 12:47. Keisha called first. It went to voicemail because Marcus had made his decision about Tuesday and Wednesday, and the calls were part of Tuesday and Wednesday. He would listen to the voicemails eventually, all of them, completely, with the same thoroughness he brought to everything, and he would make his decision about how to respond from a position of full information. Brenda called at 1:15 from a number he didn't recognize, which he also didn't answer. Devin called at 1:42. Marcus looked at the name on the screen for 3 full rings, thought about the garbage bag and the cardboard boxes and some men aren't built for this life, and let it go to voicemail. Gregory called at 2 and Marcus answered immediately. "Media wants a follow-up interview," Gregory said. "No," Marcus said. "Thought so. Also," Gregory paused, "I've had 3 calls in the last hour from someone named Brenda Caldwell who says she's your mother-in-law and that she has something important to discuss regarding your assets." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "She's not my mother-in-law. The divorce isn't technically final yet, but she's not—" He stopped. "Tell her you can't discuss my assets with anyone who isn't me." "Already did," Gregory said. She called back. "Tell her again, as many times as necessary." He ended the call, stood in the parking lot in Raymond's too wide suit jacket, looked at the sky, the specific blue of a Wednesday noon, a sky that had been this color on every Wednesday of their marriage, on the anniversary of the backyard party, on the day he had proposed in the middle of the week because the feeling didn't wait for Saturday. Raymond pulled the car around. "Where to?" said Raymond. Marcus got in. Thought about Georgia, about his mother's voice, about a piece of land that had been waiting for a decision, about heat distribution and the mathematics of hotspots, and the 3-hour conversation that had started everything, and the woman on Delwood Avenue who was crying in a way she didn't intend anyone to see. He thought about all of it. "Get food," he said. "Real food, not takeout. I'll cook." Raymond looked at him. "You're going to cook?" "I cook well," Marcus said. "You've just never let me." Raymond drove. Marcus looked out the window at the city where he had been a logistics coordinator and a husband and a man with a garbage bag on a curb, and now something the news was calling a multi-millionaire, though the news had always been better at identifying what people had than who they were. He knew who he was. He had always known. That was the part that the Caldwell family had never understood, had never tried to understand, and that no amount of money could teach them now. Not because money couldn't teach lessons, but because the lesson had been available for 3 years without the money, and they had chosen not to learn it. Some things you had to be ready to see. They hadn't been ready. That wasn't his problem anymore. He was going to cook dinner on Raymond's stove and call his mother and look at flights to Georgia and think about what to build on a piece of land that had been waiting for the right moment. And the right moment, he had decided, was now. It had taken 3 days and $5 and 1 ticket and a number with 8 zeros to arrive at now. But he was here, and now was enough.